Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Join me on today's video where I've got a brand new watch released from Seestern. This will be a review and not just an unboxing. But these are not three different watches. It's the same watch in three different colors. So Seestern were kind enough to send in all the different variants that they produce of this particular watch. Now, before I go any further, let me get you guys very excited. Now, if you follow Seestern on Instagram or you're in a couple of the forums, you might have seen a new watch that they've teased will be coming out in around March. Now this is of course the Pelagos 39 homage, and so far in pictures it looks grade A, it looks stunning, and if they do it right, I think they're going to get lots of orders. I mean, the things that I do know, talking to Seestern, it is going to be full titanium. It's going to have loads of lume, and apparently it's a 1-1 homage. They have absolutely nailed everything down to a T, but that's what they've said. So it's a work in progress. So hopefully everything's good and they can bring us a stunner of a watch ready for March. Now, interestingly enough, the Tudor Pelagos 39 is probably the only Tudor that appeals to me. It's the only one that I like. Believe me, I've tried to like Tudor so much, but it's something that throws me off about them. So very interested in that. So keep an eye on that, guys. Make sure you wait, save up your money, and that Pelagos 39 homage should be with us in a few months. So what watch is this? Let me move these boxes out of the way, get the watches unwrapped, and show you which ones I have today. So this model is a S416. It's Seestern's version of the GS Diver. This is what they have homaged. And the particular case they've done, they've gone for, I think only one other company has done previously, which was the Pagani design. And interesting enough, this is not priced too far away from Pagani design, and which is what shocked me the most. And it's priced at £123, out of the sales. So that's a very cheap price. We know Seestern have incredible build quality, and I'm hoping they haven't cut any corners just to give us a very affordable price. It's not always the best thing. I know as consumers we want cheap prices, but they really have to take a few shortcuts in order for that to happen. So when I initially saw this watch, I did a community post when they released this, and one thing that did throw me off, I wasn't too sure about, was the dial setup. That 12369, those Arabics just next to those dive watch style hour markers. Yeah, I didn't know what to think of it, and I think the feedback I got, there were a few people that did like it, but I think that most of you guys were, in line with what I was thinking, that, yeah, it doesn't look quite right. I think it should just have markers. Maybe that's because what we're conditioned to seeing, and of course they're homaging a GS Diver, so it would have been better to obviously get that right dial. Now, the color options available, you've got a white dial with the blue Arabics, and of course that Seamaster style blue bezel, and I think for the particular design that probably looks the nicest. And of course you've got your staple black one, black dial, black bezel, and the one in hand which I like because of the dial. It's that fume sunburst blue dial with that black bezel. So let's give you an overview of the specifications. The watch is, of course, as you can tell, full 316L stainless steel. You've got a 120 click unidirectional bezel with a ceramic bezel. It is loomed. You've got the Seiko NH35. Seestern always use the Seiko NH35, so very reliable movement. Hacks and winds. B rate of 21,600 vibrations per hour, a 3 Hz beat rate. Very accurate and super reliable workhorses from Japan. You also got 200 meters of water resistance, screw down crown, Caseback, and of course a sapphire crystal with some AR coating. In terms of dimensions, this is a chunky watch. So diameter is 44 millimeters, a thickness of 13 millimeters, a lug to lug of 47 millimeters, which is quite compact considering the 44 mil diameter. But that lug to lug does extend due to those male end links out to 53 millimeters. However, the slope is not that bad, and it will keep the watch still fitting quite small. The overall weight is 190 grams, so a very hefty watch, a lot of weight in that watch case, a little bit of weight in the bracelet as well. So that's full on specs, and again, looking at the price, £123 is not a lot, but have they had to cut any corners? So let's find out. Let me get these watches cleaned up so we can have a closer look at them. So let's start off by looking at the blue dial first and foremost. As I said, it's probably my favorite one. I love that blue sunburst, that fume effect where it darkens around the edges, and it is a typical dial construction. You've got applied hour markers, you've also got applied Arabics at the 12, 3, 6 and 9, polished frames around the hour markers, and fully polished Arabics. You've got printed text just below the 12 and above the 6. and you've got a glossy chapter ring. That's quite different. We usually see a matte plastic chapter ring, but this is quite glossy. And I do like the glossiness on this watch because it's meant to be homaging a GS, and you know those watches are known for their shine, that Zarastu polishing, etc. And with this one, yeah, you do get quite a bit of shine coming off the case, dial, you know, that glossy chapter ring and that ceramic bezel insert. Date window at 4 p.m. In the space of a baton, so that's okay. It is loomed as well, so we'll have a look at the loom shot because that should be quite good. In terms of the handset, they've got a GS style handset, cathedralized hour hand. You've got a capped seconds hand, nice touch. Handset is fully brushed, great proportions. It seems to hit the hour markers just right. The construction is really well made. You know, Seestern haven't let us down in terms of how they make the dials. They do give us pretty high quality dials. Let's give you a quick look at the white one because that is considerably different in the sense that it does have blued hour markers, and they've got really nice shine to them. And it looks good, the blue and white. It really makes the hour marker stand out with that blue bezel. Everything else is the same. There's no issues there, no difference there. Now let's have a quick look at alignment. So if we focus on the 12 o'clock marker, chapter ring and the bezel, does it line up? Let's check the bezel while we're here. Okay, I'll talk about the rotation just slightly. Let's check alignment first. I've missed it again twice. Need to slow down. Okay, does it line up? So yeah, this one seems to line up. Let's check consistency. Let's check across the second one. Okay, so what do we see? So I think it lines up. If I'm being overly critical, I'd say the chapter ring is just a touch to the left of the 12 o'clock hour marker, but I think that is me being very critical. Now the bezel rotation, it's a very nice bezel. It's made well. You can see it's fully polished around the side, machined extremely well, very smooth. The insert itself is nice and wide, large. You've got white markers on there, but that's very light, and I think quite a few of you guys will have that as a problem. It's not loose at all. It doesn't move. There's no rattle in it. It's pretty solid, but that rotation is literally, there's no friction in there. Very, very light. You know, I'm just literally, let's keep the watch still, and I can basically rotate it by keeping the watch down. So yeah, that's just a little too loose for me. I mean, I like smooth rotating bezels, but it doesn't feel like that. It's just, as I said, just very free moving, not enough friction. That pip at 12 o'clock is finished well enough, silver frame around there. So let's go ahead and have a look at that loom. Wow, how's that for a loom shot? Everything is fully loomed. The ceramic insert, the hour markers, the hands, the date window, very bright, very evenly applied, and as you can see, that is a hell of a lot of loom. Absolute loom monster. As you can see, BGW9, yeah, very thoroughly applied, and I really love that visual. So that's awesome to see. So let's move on to the case, and the case is finished really well. If you go down to the lugs, you can see a few facets at the lugs. If you just look at the base of those lug tips, you can see they're brushed. You've got a wide facet along the side of those lugs, which then goes across into the side of the case, a fully polished highlight along the side there, and it follows it down. Mirror finish, flawless, executed really well. And move over to the side of the case, you'll find this very fine satinized brushing, which I absolutely love. It's very nice to touch. Clean transition lines. I think with this mirrored and brush finishing, you know, it's very important to have very clean and crisp transitions. We've seen on a lot of the watches where they kind of merge or they're not as crisp as you'd like them. Of course, with this polished lugs, the side of the case, you know, there will be fingerprint magnets, you can see, because it is quite close to the A face. But it's executed well. Even just under the bezel, you can see it's brushed slightly there, so a lot of attention to detail. They literally have not, you know, cut any corners as far as I can tell when it comes to the dial, the case. Of course, the bezel's a bit loose. You know, maybe they could have added more friction to that, but it feels good in hand. If you turn the watch over, let's have a look at the case back. What do we have now? We've got a plain case back, screw down, of course. It is brushed in the center, and you've got some specifications on the back. What you'll notice is that the C Star, you know, named Seestern, what you'll notice is that branding is missing that we've seen on the Doxa homages. So they've gone away with that starfish. They've put an S on that polished crown. I'll touch upon the crown in more detail. The caseback is also void of that heavily detailed caseback we had on the Doxa homages. You know, they're quite weighty, quite thick, heavily engraved with that starfish, you know, a very detailed scene indeed for the caseback. So they've stepped away from that. and I don't know if they're going to continue that. Now, moving back to this case, let's talk a little bit about the crown. You'll notice the crown is tucked in beautifully into that case. I love how it goes in. It does reduce how much that crown sticks out. It's a great diameter. I think it's about 6.5 mil, if not around 7. But why am I guessing? Let's just have a quick look. Yeah, touching 7 millimeters, which is perfect, and you can see that S there, which I think a lot of people will like. I think a lot more people prefer the S over the starfish. Now, one thing I did notice about Seestern watches is their crown action is phenomenal, buttery smooth. You don't feel any thread engagement on the screw down, but the operation is perfect. You can see it's not too large actually, so when you do screw it back down, it tucks itself in nicely into the case. Yeah, very positive pop, and that's a very nice crown action. And you know, moving into the case, I really like how they've done that, and it is spot on around 4 p.m. So not even 3.8. That looks exactly at 4, or maybe just a bit earlier. But feels good, finished well, and machined really well. Now let's move on to that bracelet. You'll see it's a fully brushed bracelet, and you've got hairline brushing rather than that satin brushing, so you can see that grain across that bracelet. You've also got polished highlights on the either side of those center links, so it is effectively a 5-link bracelet, so superior quality, male end links, solid end links, all solid links of course, and you've got screw down links holding these together. Now the bracelet is 22 millimeters at the lug. It does taper down very slightly to 20 millimeters and goes back up at the clasp at 21.5 mil, or around 22. So you know, it's not a dramatic taper. I would have preferred maybe 18 millimeters, because that 22 mil lug width is quite wide, but the bracelet is executed so nicely, no sharp edges. It is finished well, and you've got some nice light play on there looking at the polished and that hairline brushing. Now moving on to the clasp, it's that Seestern clasp that we've seen on the Doxa homages. It's a pull apart clasp, 4 micro adjustments, but they've got that star logo on there. So this is where our first, you know, discrepancy lies, is the logo's there, but not on the crown and not on the case back, but just on the clasp. Now this is a recycled clasp, but I gotta say it does not match this bracelet at all. I would have really loved to see some pushers, and maybe, you know, that San Martin style clasp. We need to see a lot of finishing on there, that smooth brushing that we see, those, you know, beveled edges or chamfered edges on that clasp. This is a very tool watch clasp. It seems very rudimentary in comparison to that bracelet. Now, can you replace the clasp? On normal bracelets you can, but this one, it's actually riveted into the end link, so yeah, you can't even replace the clasp, so which is a bit of a shame. And I think the clasp does really let this watch down quite a bit. It does take away from the bracelet quite a bit, but the bracelet is very nice. You know, it's a flashy bracelet, so you gotta have a clasp that matches. Let's get this on the wrist and give you guys a summary about this Seestern S416. So here's the Seestern S416 on my 6.5-inch wrist, and it does wear like quite a big watch, but it's perfectly within the boundaries of my wrist size. Yeah, good weight as well, you know, quite evenly spread out. The bracelet gives you loads of light. That case, you know, the A face, we can see those polished highlights, really does pop. And you know, it's that Seiko sort of design that we get, you know, short lug to lug. As I said about those male end links, don't really add too much to the wrist. Anything smaller than a 6.5-inch wrist, yes, you will struggle, but it'll just wear better on bigger wrists, and you can feel how well built it is. Only downside, as I mentioned, is the clasp. It is a bit of a nose trying to pull it apart to get it off. I'm so used to using pushers, and you know, just that quick execution to take the bracelet off. I don't really expect to fight with it. So in terms of anything subjective, of course, the dial. So I won't comment on that because the dial is executed really well. Superb loom. You know, it's just, you know, what you think about the actual dial, the setup, you know, the numerals on display. The bezel itself made again really well, but just too loose for my liking. A very, I think, minor misalignment on the chapter ring possibly, but not too bad at all. Now the case, again, executed exceptionally well, really well finished. The brushing is super fine, polishing, the facets that you can see, all good. The crowns are very nice touch, very smooth operation. The bracelet is really good as well, finished great. It's just the clasp that lets it down. So in terms of, you know, what Seestern do, I think they have again kind of reset the benchmark, because if you look at the price, £120, it is the same price as some Pagani design watches, but but they've given us a lot more. So, you know, for £120, look at the quality of the bracelet you can get, the quality of the case, the finishing level, you know, the dial level. You saw the loom, it's an absolute loom beast. So they have, you know, again, reset the bar a bit. I would have preferred this watch to be probably a bit more expensive, you know, going up to 160, and maybe that would allow them to invest in a different clasp and, you know, maybe sort the bezel out. This is where I think if they try to keep bringing in very cheap watches, you have to, you know, something's got to give, guys. And, you know, then it doesn't feel good because you can do so much better. But as it stands, £120, it is probably the best GS Diver homage that you have on AliExpress. Totally, you know, beats Pagani design in every aspect. And yeah, if you can get past the numerals, I think this is definitely worth buying, because the clasp, with the price considered, and the bezel is definitely no deal breakers, because there's far more things which work and look good and are better on this watch. And also an added bonus is you can modify this. The dial is 20.5mm, so you can put in any other dial that you want. Bonus being you've got a loom date disc already, and you've already got some cool hands, so that should be an easy conversion. So that's it for me today, guys. Hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you in the next one.